I teach the true Black liberating information that most Black people have been either brainwashed not to see or are afraid to teach. Nonetheless, those who know the truth must teach. African proverb. Today I'm going to explain the white society's ongoing perception management system that is being deployed unrelentingly against the collective minds of Black people. Perception management system uses disinformation and deceptive propaganda to manipulate a targeted population's perceptions in ways that benefits the group that are deploying the perception management system. And why is this important? It's because our perceptions shapes our actions and behavior, both in short and long term. Therefore, those who control our perceptions are able to control our actions and behaviors, both in short and long term. Because the white society controls all of the official narratives and mainstream media images that Black people receive, they exploit this scenario to shape our collective perceptions in ways that makes us think in ways that are against our own interests and that instead serves the interests of the white society. If you don't think that the white society would exploit its monopoly over the information and media images that we receive to garner an outcome among us that benefits themselves, you are delusional or naive. It's the way they are. It's the way they've always been, and it's the only way they know how to be. These are facts and reality they brainwash many of us from seeing. As a means of maintaining white social dominance over Black people, and to protect the white society from massive unified Black retribution, white oppressive forces have deployed an elaborate perception management system against Black people. Black people are in fact the unknowing victims of the most elaborately deployed perception management system in world history. And while all white nations presently deploys this same perception management system to control their Black populations, this perception management system was originally implemented in 1968 in response to the U.S. unprecedented unified Black protest movement during the 1960s. They developed a perception management system to address what they then called the U.S. Negro problem. It worked so well that all white nations started using the same perception management system for controlling their Black population as well. In 1968, white social scientists that were hired by the Kerner Commission to study the reason for that decade's unprecedented unified protest determined that there were 4 aggravating core factors. The first one being blatant white racism. The second being an elevated and unifying collective self-esteem among the Black population brought on by the emergence of that decade's Black Pride movement. The third factor they determined was that African Americans had developed an allegiance towards Africa that impeded our patriotism towards the U.S. The fourth thing they discovered was that while the white oppressors, through their weaponry advantage of guns and cannons, could brutally invade and enslave Black people, they, however, cannot win our loyalty or sustain peace with us indefinitely unless our collective minds were manipulated to facilitate that peace. More specifically, that our minds be manipulated to think in ways that prevent us from unifying against the white oppressors. Because whenever people are oppressed for long durations, their collective aggressions towards their oppressors will continue to grow until it reaches a boiling point, resulting in massive acts of rebellion against their oppressors. The oppressed always eventually rebels against their oppressors. This is an inherent response within the collective human psyche whenever people are held on the long-term oppression. This is what was actually happening amongst the African American population during the 1960s. White racism had reached a boiling point within the collective minds of the African American population, which resulted in that decade's unprecedented unified Black protests. Those white social scientists therefore logically determined that they could subdue the U.S. Negro problem through an elaborate perception management system that met the following criteria. A perception management system that would provide the white society with a covert method for subjugating black people. Now they can abandon their blatant racism, which is the core factor. A perception management system that would subdue black unified protest by keeping our collective self-esteem very low. This is why the white society now keeps African Americans believing only the fraudulent, worst possible narratives about ourselves. Doing so keeps our collective self-esteem low. When the oppressed are made self-loathing, we are much easier to control. They also determined that they could erode our allegiance to Africa by creating a propaganda campaign that turned Africa into a source of shame and humiliation and embarrassment for African Americans. You see, it's easier to separate a people from their motherland if they've been made to be ashamed of it. This is why the white media only showcases the poorest parts of Africa. This propaganda campaign worked so well that many African Americans now feels grateful to the white society for their enslavement of our ancestors, because we've been manipulated to perceive it as having been more of a rescue mission that ultimately benefited us, thus increasing our allegiance to the U.S. And finally, this perception management propaganda campaign also shifts black collective aggressions away from the white society and redirects it against ourselves by constantly inundating us with fraudulent propaganda that exaggerating the issue of black on black crime. Wake up and critically think. The white society always showcased the issue of black on black crime. Do you think they're putting all of their energy and effort of doing this because they care of the issue of black people killing black people? Of course not. It's fraudulent propaganda that benefits the white society by shifting black collective aggressions away from the white society and redirecting it towards ourselves. It's being done because it's also being done not through just news report. It's also being done through those TV crime reenactment shows. Look at the facts. African Americans makes up 13.5% of the U.S. population. FBI data confirms that most violent crimes are committed annually by Caucasians. However, when you watch those TV shows, those crime shows, they showcase black on black crime at a 67% rate. This disproportion is by design. Black people are being perpetually systematically inundated with black on black crime propaganda that is designed to subliminally embed the message into our subconscious minds that it's ourselves that are our own worst enemies. It's how the white society now keeps black collective aggression shifted away from the white society and redirected towards ourselves. This is the perception management system that's being deployed against us. It's also the true reason why many black people now insist that we are our own worst enemies. Insist it. The minds of large targeted populations are easily manipulated when people don't know what's actually being done to them. This is our reality. Something else that I should have mentioned earlier was that those white social scientists were also instructed to find African Americans' greatest strength and to attack it unrelentingly, and to find African Americans' greatest weakness and to also exploit it unrelentingly. They determined that our greatest strength was black unity. They therefore attack it unrelentingly with the black divisive propaganda. The white media's unrelenting black on black crime propaganda is how they're attacking black unity unrelentingly. They determined that our most exploitable weakness was the fact that we were totally stripped of our true identity and culture during slavery. This makes us more susceptible to negative media social engineering. They therefore exploited this fact to negatively steer our culture through negative media social engineering while we think we're steering ourselves. What many African Americans naively believe is our own swagger are actually the result of white media social engineering. Most people naively believe that the media reflects our reality, but in truth, it's most often people that imitate what they see in the media. A group's identity is shaped by how they repeatedly see themselves being depicted within the media, because people often become those media depictions of themselves that they accept as being their reality. Therefore, those who control the people's media images are able to steer their culture. Therefore, because the white society controls our media images, they negatively steer our culture. And we don't even realize it. Our youth imitates those derogatory white media depictions of themselves, thus making those depictions now true. It's the true reason why millions of African Americans now call ourselves niggers, thugs, bitches and hoes, sags our pants, and glorifies pimps. They negatively stare our culture while we think we're staring ourselves. This is not some feeble attempt to absolve or accept our own behaviors by falsely blaming whites. This is a true social science. The black population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know it doesn't know. White oppressive forces are playing chess, while black people aren't even playing checkers. Black people are playing hopscotch. The black population's ignorance of the war that's being waged against us is the white oppressor's greatest power over us. Black people critically think. Given that our perceptions of ourselves is being controlled by our enemies, we must always question that perception, especially given that these enemies have proven themselves as being history's most notoriously deceitful and most evildoers throughout history. Moreover, the oppressor's depiction of the oppressed is never a true one. It's always a false negative depiction that has been distorted to serve the hidden agendas of the oppressors. This fact has remained consistent throughout history and is still consistent now. The reason why you're not hearing about this stuff from our leaders, because we don't have true leaders. We only have puppets who work for the white establishment. They give the illusion. Sadly, to our own detriment, the oppressed will always believe the fraudulent words about themselves. Franz Fanon said that. Black people, we must wake up to our reality. The white media has always represented a tyranny of the white society's power over black people. They've created a prison for our minds. And I'm trying to free your mind, but I can only show you the door. You're the one who has to walk through it. The Matrix is a story of what's been done to black people. Wake up.